Renaissance Technology, they were, it's a very successful hedge fund. They're using AI and machine learning technology since a very, very long time. And they were very successful, but no one, as far as I know, in the team was a financial expert. They were physicists, astronomer, chemists, and so forth.
Hi, welcome to Basis Point. Today, we sit down with François Gilardoni, a scientist turned global tech and business leader with more than 25 years of experience bridging innovation, finance, and strategy. From his PhD in computational chemistry in Geneva to postdoctoral research at Berkeley, François has always been at the frontier of science. But it's his pivot into technology and finance that really stands out. As the CTO of Globas Group, François pioneered Catalyst, a proprietary AI and agentic platform that strengthens strategic and tactical decision-making in venture capital, M&A, and open innovation. This generative AI-powered solution identifies talent, companies, and expertise to deliver high-impact matches and solutions for clients' technical, operational, and business challenges. I hope you'll enjoy the talk, and if you like our content, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episodes. In this conversation, we'll explore how AI is reshaping the financial industry, what it takes to scale innovation across industries, and why agentic systems might actually redefine strategy itself. So I'll try to sound smart and hope you enjoy the conversation. François Gilardoni, seriously though, has AI become completely unavoidable in finance today?
According to Morgan Stanley and McKinsey reports, you have about 70% of American firms that are using AI, specifically Gen AI solutions. That represent roughly $340 billion in terms of added value. Then when you look at, for instance, forecast for 2030, it's about $5 and $10 trillion of added value. Now, if you drill down in terms of basically how Gen AI is used, in regional banks, for instance, it's about 12%. So you can see a very big discrepancy between large financial institutions and smaller banks. As well, I think what's very interesting to see is the situation in Switzerland. So according to FINMA, you have about 50% of financial firms in Switzerland that are using Gen AI, and about 25% who plan to use Gen AI in the next 3 years. So you can see that Switzerland is basically, behind, but still following up. In terms of technology that Switzerland is using, it's mainly American technologies, OpenAI, Azure, and perhaps Switzerland should reconsider which technology to use.
So they're mainly using these LLMs to build in-house tools?
What they do, if you look at basically how Gen AI is used, or let's say, you can basically slice in 3 big chunks how AI functions. So AI per se exists since the 40s. Went through hot summers, cold winters, a lot of expectations, a lot of disappointments. And so basically, you see that machine learning basically existed since a long time. And I think that what's changing now is basically the access basically to infrastructures like, cloud computing like Google, Azure, or even in Asia with Alibaba. And as well, you see a lot of models like Anthropic, like OpenAI, like Mistral in Europe. So I think that there's nothing, as far as I know, in Switzerland that would enable financial firms to use Swiss-made technology. So it's more about taking and embedding existing solutions and customizing them, mainly for operation, mainly for compliance, mainly for customer support, and mainly for basically trying to optimize processes.
So we'll get into that specifically in a bit, but you said today about half of the financial institutions are using AI.
That's correct.
What's the other half doing? Why aren't they jumping on the bandwagon? Are they just waiting to see what's going to happen with it? Do they not have the expertise or the resources to start implementing AI tools? Because, I mean, a lot of people are getting into AI today because of FOMO, the fear of missing out. You know, you gotta be on AI, you gotta use AI. So are these 50% not using AI right to wait and see what's going to happen with it? Or are they late?
Well, it's a very difficult question, but I think it's a mix of everything. So basically, when you look at the financial ecosystem, you may have accounting firms, you may have auditing firms, you may have hedge funds, you may have trading finance companies, you may have VC firms, you have larger banks or regional banks, like we have a lot of regional banks in Switzerland. And I think that as well, some of these companies are mainly dealing with past events, like auditing or accounting in a way. Some others are looking at the present, how to optimize basically processes, how to offer a better customer service. And others are pushing a bit the envelope, like hedge funds or VC firms and others, or quant firms, to be basically in a position where they can be better than others. And for instance, when you look at Anthropic, the last product they have produced, Claude for Finance, all these big groups will have access to such technologies. How can you make yourself unique? How can you make sure that you can keep the competitive edge? So on one hand, you have a lot of people who basically have the time, the money, and the will to experiment, to discover, to ensure that the data they are accessing are available. And then you have small groups who perhaps do not understand how AI functions. Why should we change when we have a business that functions? So they try to go more, I would say, to the classical optimization cycle, what we call narrow AI, where basically you try to optimize processes. You try perhaps to find machine learning to summarize documents.
So gains in efficiency rather than new value creation.
Absolutely. So I think that, and the problem is, and if you look at, for instance, a report that has been published by MIT saying that 95% of AI projects are failing. And when you read the report, actually it's not because of the technology, it's because most of the time lack of understanding of technology, lack of understanding of the limitations of technology, lack of basically training at the staff level, high expectations. So now how do you define what is acceptable, not acceptable, what's a success? And I think that it's a time where basically everyone along the chain will learn from mistakes from other people.
Can we spend some time looking at some use cases now? Do you have examples of how the financial industry has already been transformed by AI?
Yeah, for instance, if you look at call centers. So generally when you call a call centers because of your credit card or because you want to ask for a loan or a mortgage, it's often a very convoluted situation. You have to press on, several buttons, you have to wait, and sometimes you land on people who are unqualified, and then you have to talk to a manager or let me call you back. So I think that by using more, I would say, Gen AI, where basically it would be in a situation where you can redirect people to the right person, and when you land to basically an advisor, well, that person would be able to not only offer you customized advice that fits exactly to what you want to do, but also when the call is finished, that person can summarize the discussion so that you can go down the pipeline and basically offer customized services, accelerate all that.
So here we're looking at maybe use cases in consumer banking, but if we're looking at wealth management and private banking, for example.
Yeah, so for instance, in terms of loans, as we said before, but basically I just want to say that in some situations you may have about 50 or 60% save in time and as well in terms of resources. So it's quite substantial. Now in terms of wealth management or hedge funds, you can be in a situation where basically you may have your own models running. So you can have your software running, you may have your metrics you want to use, But what happens with Gen AI, you can basically collect what we say model situations where you can connect so many different type of data sources. You can then analyze that, and then perhaps you can find the edge compared to other people. So it's a way basically to collect a lot of data, analyze data, and then find out which perhaps systems may complement your software that are already existing.
So I'm gonna take an example of what I see in the work that I do personally, which is a lot of content creation. Today, you see a lot of the content being shared online looking pretty much the same. Everything has the same tone to it. So are we at risk of seeing the same thing with financial institutions and just having AI-led banks just spitting out all of the same results, ideas, propositions? Are we not, they're not going to become homogeneous because they're all using the same tools?
I think it's a very good point. As I mentioned before, when you see global finance, basically, the JP Morgans of this world and BlackRocks and whatever will use these kind of tools, or pension funds. How would you ensure that you will be in a situation where you can offer a service to your customers or be in a position, you as a financial institution, to keep the competitive edge? And I think that when you look at basically the way AI in general or Gen AI in general functions, so you have the infrastructure. As we mentioned, you may have Anthropic, you may have OpenAI, you have other tools out there. Then you have the computing power, cloud services, and in between you have your data. And we were talking about regional banks before. Even though regional banks have less money, less skills, because now acquiring skills is super expensive in terms of engineers, data engineers, so forth, they have data that are able basically to differentiate them from other people. And I think that today what will make the difference is basically the quality of data that will go into the models so that you will have customized model. And as an extension of that, so we spoke about narrow AI, where basically you simplify your processes so that you can save some time. I think that the difference as well with Gen AI is the ubiquity of the technology. When you look at Gen AI, you have a huge knowledge base, semantic space, and you have so many information that already are in there. Perhaps you don't know how to use them. And now if you ask someone who's 10 years old, who's able to write, well, you can basically interact. So it's like kind of anthropomorphic relationship with your language model. If you compare that to blockchain technology, which is very interesting, well, it's still something that is somehow intangible unless you are an expert, because you don't see blockchain technology, on your desk, etc. So I think that when you look at this, the progression, we will go to what we call agentic AI, where you will have basically bespoke LLM models that can be, it's basically a collection of workflows with different type of agents that are specialized in some applications, reading documents, financial modeling, finding news, etc., etc. So they will take some kind of autonomous decisions to create basically a framework where a human will be in a position to take, I would say, a more informed decision. And you may have as well, I was mentioning hedge funds before, or VC funds, where you can be in a situation where you have hybrid situations where basically you mix your MATLAB or R or whatever code you have written, or Python codes, and combining that into your workflow so that basically your LLMs will be in a position to prepare inputs to do that. You can be in a situation where, for instance, you have your workflow and say, well, how can I reduce basically hallucinations? And basically hallucinations is when a AI model is lying to you, not willingly, but lying to you. So basically you may combine 2 or 3 models, or you can have iterations to say, well, you have an output and say, well,
Create some sort of a redundancy
absolutely.
to minimize.
Well, tell me if what has been generated by this agent is correct or incorrect. And for instance, I built some workflows where, collecting agentic workflows where you can basically go on the ACC, finding information about stocks and so forth, and it's running in minutes. So, and before, when you have, analysts who had to do that, would take much more time. So it's a time-saving environment. And also it's a way for analysts to be better at what they do and not to spend, I would say, mundane activities in try to, go on some websites, try to summarize some documents and go through some financial statements.
And how do we deal with the risks of these of the use of these tools, for example, in compliance tasks or in portfolio management? If there's a mistake made by the AI, I mean, we still bear the responsibility of the institution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think compliance is a big issue, and actually it's very much with, and again, depends of in which country you are. If you are in North America, where it's a bit more, I'm not saying it's a bit more relaxed, but I would say, you don't have to audit, as far as I know today, the models, the way they are produced, the way they are answering your questions, the same way as in the EU, which is more stringent, about fairness, about accuracy, about how you build your models. And then you can go to China, that as well is becoming more and more restrictive, and then you can go to Japan where it's less restrictive. So I think that you have different layers when you're dealing with data. So first of all, you have to ensure that the data you are using to train your models, or that have been trained to use, I would say, commercial models, they're not biased, that they are clean in a way. Because as well as a user, and you say, well, I paid for that license, but actually it may generate some bias without me knowingly. The other aspect is, for instance, prompt injection. How do you ensure that the model is not going to be modified or altered by third parties? How do you ensure that the data you entered that could be potentially used for a model, for your customers and so forth, could be perhaps visible eventually, or being, used by someone else. So I think in terms of compliance, you have to look at basically the AI governance you may have in your data. And even if you are a financial institution, you may have legacy systems, and actually you may say, well, actually X is entitled to read these documents, but Y is not able to do that. So you have as well some labeling. Even if you build in-house some, I would say, LLMs, you have to ensure that you have some data labeling so that only the right profile of people may use data. So I think that sometimes you have to build smaller models on the top of the existing model so that you can be much more efficient in what you do, so that you can ensure that compliance is fulfilled.
So in terms of expertise, do banks need to hire chief AI officers or have a subject matter expert for each department? What's the best way to organize themselves?
Well, I think that if you look at, I think regional banks are very good examples because they have limited means. They have legacy systems. They have data that are in a way unique. Most of the time they don't have very good knowledge about AI solutions. So I think that the first step is to be able to extract your data from the legacy systems. So then most of the time you need to have either consultants coming in, helping you to do that, or perhaps your IT staff can be trained. After that, most of the time you don't have the understanding on how to use AI or Gen AI in general, or even agentic AI. So you may perhaps partner with small fintechs, or you may have a hybrid solution where basically you source, I would say, Anthropic or OpenAI systems you develop your own LLMs with the data you were able to curate and extract from your legacy systems. And I think that I would see more a kind of hybrid model where basically you have, in one hand, people working in a bank having the knowledge of the industry, knowing exactly what they want to do, because perhaps they were just limited, intellectually by, well, I want to do that, but with the engines I have in place, I cannot do that. So I think it's going to be a mix. And I think that you always see large companies, being able to have, 10,000 coders and basically to be at the forefront of innovation. But I think that even smaller groups are in a situation where they can train people so that they can understand what system can do. And basically these people can share a very important knowledge with fintech that have perhaps a very biased view of the world in the financial industry. And I think that it's where basically it's going to work. And indeed, you have to work with, build a group about AI governance. You have to make sure that regulations and privacy and data quality are basically respected along the line.
How much of all of this is AI washing? Honestly.
Well, if you look at investments, if you look at recent announcement from OpenAI, from NVIDIA and Oracle, they invested, I think, overall $400 billion.
400 billion.
Yes. If you look at the Stargate, plan in the US, 500 billion being invested in AI. And indeed, you always have small companies saying, well, I can do that, and actually it's just a collection of lies. But I think that it's not really a hype, given that we are, in my opinion, still discovering what AI and Gen AI specifically, or even agentic AI, can do. So I think that you will have very low-hanging fruits where you can streamline your operations, save some money, increase your fraud detection rates, improve your customer service, and so forth. And then you will have some stages where basically you experiment, you discover, you fail, and you learn.
Don't you have the feeling that everybody's just sprinkling AI on whatever they have to make it look cooler?
I think that's perhaps the case when you read the news. But I think that when you look at financial firms who exist to make money, in a way, so they are looking at technologies basically to ensure that they can keep the competitive edge and basically streamline operations to be more efficient.
As opposed to those who are selling AI gadgets to consumers.
Yes. And now you see AI, for video editing, you can see AI for, shopping, you can see AI everywhere. But the underlying technology is most of the time relying on, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, Gemini, and so forth. And as well, what's stunning is the velocity at which things change. So I was reading recently that, you have Alibaba coming out with new models. You have, ChatGPT was like 2022, I think, the first iteration. Now we are 3 years after, and it's just amazing at the pace at which it developed. And even myself, I'm very close to that ecosystem. I'm always surprised at the pace at which things have been developed. So I don't think it's hype. I think it's more a discovery and experimentation process. And I think that it would be a way for everyone in the ecosystem, including people who are basically building these models, Anthropic and OpenAI, to basically understand how to make a model more robust, more confidential, more suitable for addressing things.
So we're experimenting with something that's moving very fast, that not a lot of people understand, and that we're potentially giving unimaginable power to. Aren't we playing with fire? Couldn't this be an existential threat even for businesses or society? Because we don't know what we're doing. We don't know where we're going.
I don't know how to answer that question. In one hand, I see the value AI can bring. I see the value for businesses to be in a situation to offer better services to their customers. But on the other hand, you see more and more deepfakes using AI to basically steal money. You can see AI engines which are basically better than the best hackers in the world to hack systems.
And that take autonomous decisions sometimes.
Absolutely. So, and that's why I think that in that experimentation, I think that it's key that humans stay in the loop. And I would say what I like about AI in general is basically this hybrid brain. So you have your human brain, and then you have those LLM brains that can complement your intelligence, that can be a companion or a co-pilot, and basically perhaps make you discover or can make you realize things you did not even think about because of your education, because your work culture. The drawback though is in order to, and if we come back to hallucinations, is to be in a situation to understand if the answer that was given to you is a lie or if it's real. So I think that it's as well important for humans to continue to develop some skills and basically ensuring that this collective intelligence, that experimentation, that those companions you may have could be basically understood and exploited at the right level. Some freedom, not too much. And if you want to get some freedom, well, where do you stop the trust levels? And I think it's what we're going to see with agentic AI. I think it's, besides, data collection, data validation, it's where we're going to see issues, but because you have to be sure that it works all the time.
I know nobody has a crystal ball, but who do you think is going to lose their job? And are there any new jobs that are going to be created in the financial industry specifically?
I think in general, I would say with Gen AI in general, I think that jobs that do not require a lot of skills and skills that can be automated, I think that these jobs will likely disappear. And I will take an example about a warehouse. Initially Amazon was, or even others, were using humans to move boxes around. Now you may have basically robotics that takes care of that. I think that what we will see in the future, and again, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's basically letting AI or Gen AI models or agentic AI models to take care of mundane financial situations, to be in a situation where they can summarize documents, they can extract information, and basically have people basically using more their brains to understand what they can do with the information they have collected. So I think it's another way of thinking. As I mentioned before, it's kind of hybrid intelligence, even though I don't really like the term intelligence for AI, but it's more about understanding how you can leverage data or you can leverage information you never had before. And as well, the speed at which it goes to collect that information. Perhaps every night you may collect all that information. Well, perhaps you were modeling when you're dealing with hedge funds, perhaps you didn't think about geopolitics. Well, actually, you will be able to include geopolitics into your models, understand what could be the effects in some countries on basically some assets you have. So I think it's a very different way to work. But everything goes so fast. It's very difficult, type of jobs you may say. People were saying, well, all the coders will be replaced by AI. Still today, and I've seen New York Times saying that, young, basically graduates in basically computer science had some issues in finding jobs. I think that the accuracy of the models today are not so great, sometimes 70%, sometimes 80%.
So you still need somebody to finish the job.
You still need to find someone who can interact. And I think that the big assets I think that people should develop now is what I call natural language. I understand very well how you can communicate with your LLMs. I understand very well what you want to do. I understand very well what are your expectations. I understand very well what should be the answer.
So you think we should have maybe prompting courses in schools? And
I think that AI should be an environment where you can free your imagination, discover new things, discover how you can basically deploy new services. For instance, you may have some bespoke LLM agents to have CFO on demands or banking on demands.
I was actually going to get to that because I'm thinking of an investment team, for example.
Yes.
You have, 12 people within an investment team. They're gathering data, they're crunching numbers, they have their investment meetings to make the decisions of how they're going to allocate the assets in the portfolio. Is there still going to be a use for all of these people tomorrow?
I think that...
Or can AI do their job better?
I don't think that AI will do the job better. I think that it's going to change the way you're going to use that manpower. In my opinion, it's a waste of time to run queries and collect data and spend a lot of time cleaning data or converting one file format to another one, etc., etc. I think it's more important, in my opinion, to really use the human brain, the ability to connect the dots in different situations. And I think that it's more, in my opinion, it's an environment where you can really exploit human brains more effectively. But for that, you have to train people. And I think that, and again, to me, it's the ability to transfer or convey to your LLM model clear instructions. And in order to convey clear instruction to your LLM model, you need to understand how to communicate effectively with your language, whether it's in English, French, Arabic, Mandarin, whatever.
You spoke of the human ability to connect the dots. But don't we acquire that ability because we've spent years of doing the grunt work, the boring work, of crunching the numbers, of doing the boring, frustrating, painful work firsthand and acquired the experience to then be able to elevate our thought process and connect these dots. So if we never do the basic work, how do we get to that place where we can connect the dots?
Let's take a simple example. Let's say that you are coding and that you want to implement a new algorithm. You want to test it. So you want to spend your time to go into looking into numerical recipes, or you want to reinvent the wheel every time, or you want to be in a position where basically you can very quickly go to a point where you can test and basically ensure that what has been implemented is effective or not effective. I would prefer to be in a situation where basically high quality code, if I may say, is generated so that I can explore things. I can try to understand how to extract all the value from my data. Try to understand perhaps, well, did you forget something? Did you consider that option? Did you consider other ways of doing it? And I think that the beauty with LLMs is the fact that you may combine different, I would say, specialties. You can take specialties coming from biology, from finance, and perhaps you have some applications that have been developed in biology or chemistry and physics that can be transposed to that. And I give you an example. Renaissance Technology, they were, it's a very successful hedge fund. They're using AI and machine learning technology since a very, very long time. And they were very successful, but no one, as far as I know, in the team was a financial expert. They were physicists, astronomer, chemists, and so forth. They were looking at numbers and basically using AI to find trends, to find correlations, to find patterns, so that they could be in a situation where they could find, basically take informed decisions and be very effective in what they were doing. So I think that the secret was in the data. So, and sometimes they failed and they learn a lot from that. And I recommend to our listeners to listen to Mr. Simon, who sadly passed away, but basically explaining how Renaissance technology used this data. He's basically were able to extract knowledge from this data. So I think that AI would enable you to go faster, to try and fail and discover and explore. So it's another way of thinking. It's more like holistic view of the world, and not be thinking in terms of silos and not thinking in terms of what you learn in college or what you learned in the past and whatever. And sometimes, some painful jobs don't bring any value.
So do we have this explorer, pioneer culture in Switzerland here to try and fail and try again and discover?
I don't know. I think that perhaps in a way we are a bit risk averse in Switzerland. And if you look at the figures I mentioned,
maybe that's why half of the bankers still aren't choosing AI.
That's correct. I was referring to that. I think that sometimes you have to be in a situation where you have to accept to fail, because failing is a way to get better. It's like when you're a child, you get up, you fall, you get up, you fall, and every time your brain is learning, how to basically use the balance, and then you can run, and then you can jump. And I think that AI is a unique opportunity, in my opinion, to be in a situation where you can have different perspectives, try, and perhaps you had some ideas and you could not implement because either technically it was too difficult or you didn't know how to do it. And now I think it's a way to basically collaborate with everyone in other industries and as well even within your banks. Work with your lawyers, work with your compliance team, work with your basically KYC, AML people, work with your, if you're in trade finance, how can you optimize your processes? Well, how can we do that? How can we build solutions so that we can do remote monitoring and not only rely on inspection companies to have a 24/7 inspection system in place, because you may use connected devices, you may use edge computing, which is basically analyzing data directly on site. You may use drones, you may use some sensors to basically monitor your commodities. You may automate your KYC ML on the fly. You may have on the top compliance. You may have automatic reporting, all that stuff. So it's basically enabling everyone in the company to build their own workflows that eventually they will interoperate, for instance, through a agentic AI. So it's a very different way of thinking. I think it's a change of paradigm that will come.
So do you think the Swiss financial industry can kind of lead the way in terms of the adoption of AI within the banking system? Because we have led the way in a lot of different aspects of the financial industry before.
If you look at the financial ecosystem in Switzerland, it's a very rich and diverse ecosystem. As I mentioned earlier, you have auditing companies, you have accounting companies, you have pension funds, you have VCs in a way, you have private equity, you have regional banks, you have larger banks, trade finance houses. I think that perhaps they should sit down and perhaps identify problems they have and not to reinvent the wheel, and basically come with a solution that can still be customized by each of these stakeholders, but basically come with a Swiss-made solution, either as well using third parties as well, but as well bringing the knowledge they have collected over decades and encapsulating that into something that is very unique and valuable.
An industry-wide initiative rather than just everyone in their own silo trying to develop solutions.
I think so. I know that, for instance, when you look at FINMA, the reporter survey, you could see that basically they were using OpenAI and Microsoft technologies. And part of the product, if I'm not mistaken, is called Finance GPT, has been developed by a Swiss company. However, and I think that in a way to reinvent what Anthropic and these people are doing, I think that's, or what Alibaba and others are doing, I think it's a waste of time in a way. I think would be interesting to basically build and leverage hybrid models where you have that intelligence, this data, which capture, as you mentioned before, so much knowledge, so much know-how, so much information that could be used to build hybrid models, but as well share experiences. How can we build an environment where basically we can learn from other people so that we don't fail? How can we choose the better infrastructure so that we don't fail and we don't repeat the same mistakes? And you could see that in the past with the oil and gas industry, for instance, where basically they sat down together with either large oil and gas companies, with EPCs, which basically are engineering, procurement, and commissioning companies, academics, to basically handle challenges in their industry and basically team up so that they could come with turnkey solutions that were valuable. Success rate, very high, close to 95%, instead of a typical 5-10% for VC firms. So I think that it's a way to collectively share problems and collectively come with a solution and build bespoke hybrid models and solutions that are suitable for your industry.
François Gilardoni, thank you very much. This was absolutely fascinating. And you know what? I'd love to have you back on the show in a few months so we can see where this is all going.
Sure. Thank you for your time and consideration. It was a lot of fun. And I would like to thank as well the production team for having me and for organizing all this.
With pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Voilà, merci d'avoir été avec nous. J'espère que ça vous a plu. Si c'est le cas, likez, partagez, laissez-nous un petit commentaire et n'oubliez pas de vous abonner. Enfin, si vous avez des choses à nous raconter, contactez-nous, venez et parlons-nous franchement.